Okay, well, we're going to read the LC suspect thread Kanye West Hurricane Katrina because it devolves into a lot of dumb discussion about whether Wingull is broken or not, based on dumb criteria of how its checks can be burnt via Scald and how it doesn't have any checks because of this, any reliable checks because of this fact. And I'm not an LC player, so I'm not going to claim anything, but at the same time, it seems like a really silly argument, especially in the pre-edited version of the original post, which I'll get into eventually. But first, I'm just going to start off by reading the uh, the original post that's there at the moment by Corporal Levi. I hope that's correct. Um, okay. The next Pokemon we are suspecting in Little Cup is Wingull. This Pokemon's water flying typing combined with its high 19 speed allows it to put severe amounts of pressure on an opposing team because of the lack of reliable switch-ins despite its average special attack. Would-be checks such as Ponyard and Tortuga become crippled by scald burns, and Hurricane's inaccuracy can be remedied with the use of Flyinium Z or simply being fast enough to afford another attack. Wingull's most reliable checks are those that can be effectively tank water and flying type moves without being punished too heavily by their secondary effects. However, these Pokemon are few and far between and can hurt the consistency of your team because of their lack of usefulness outside of checking Wingull. Looking at you, Chinchou. For these reasons, the Little Cup Council has decided that Wingull is too overbearing of a presence in the metagame and deserves to be suspected. The voting requirements are a minimum GXC of 84 with at least 40 games played. For the suspect task, we will be using the regular Little Cup ladder, so you must create a new account that begins with LCWS to qualify. The suspect will end on November 20th at 11:59 p.m. EST. So it just has the battle requirements again. You must use a fresh account registered after the posting of this thread for your Rex. The alt must begin with LCWS. Example, LCWS Levi. When posting in this thread, please keep in mind these rules. No one-liners or uninformed posts. No discussion on other potential suspects of the suspect process. And be respectful. Your post will be deleted and possibly infracted if you fail to follow them. Well, I suppose the next post is heavily based on the second rule. However, it goes about it in a way that I'd say pretty much underlines how ridiculous the suspect test actually is. Again, my personal subjective view of the metagame, I do not play it. Okay, we move on to Merit's post. Now, Merit has replied to the original post of this thread, so it will be a little choppy, but stick with me. It's also important to note that at the time of this recording, Merit has more likes than the original post does, which is very confusing for a suspect thread, and very concerning, I would say, rather, not confusing. Okay. I believe that the suspect reasoning in the thread's OP is incredibly poor, as it seems to be trying to make the claim that Wingull is uncompetitive rather than broken. It also makes some bizarre assumptions. Let's break it down. So, Corporal Levi says, despite not usually being seen as a traditionally broken, Wingull's strong tendency to leave games up to chance is arguably unacceptable for an upper tier threat. This is an interesting lead-in, since all games can be decided by luck on some level, whether that can be an unlucky critical hit or an air/dark pulse flinch from an MP Vullaby. However, this sentence does state that it's arguably unacceptable, so let's take a look at the arguments that support this. Wingull's average strength across all games is almost surely worse than all of the S ranks, in part to its reliance on the inaccurate Hurricane. This is certainly true. Wingle is held back by the low accuracy of Hurricane. However, this cannot justifiably be called uncompetitive, since it's a choice made entirely by the user of Wingle. If it was forcing the opponent into low accuracy, then I could see the argument, but this is a risk-reward decision on the part of the Wingle user entirely. If they choose to run Hurricane instead of the far more accurate Air Slash, simply for the power, and accept the trade-off of lower accuracy. Corporal Levi states, however, it has a significant chance to break through any and all of its upper-tier checks with a single well-timed skull burn. This is one of the parts that caused a lot of controversy prior to the edit that was made above. This is not only false, Tortuga still beats Wingle even when burned, and Magnemite doesn't particularly care if it's burned or not, but also a bizarre justification for why Wingle is broken, as this kind of logic can be applied to many various threats in Little Cup. Snivy can break through its checks with a well-timed paralysis from glare. Poniard can break through its checks with a well-timed Ironhead flinch. NP Vullaby can break through its checks with a properly timed Air Slash flinch. Merritt states, in the reasonably Corporal Levi states, in the reasonably likely scenario where Wingle manages to get through its checks, a combination of its speed and Hurricane's base power will often allow the opposition minimal counterplay outside for hoping for a Hurricane miss. And Merritt points out that this is the case with many offensive Pokemon, or many Pokemon in general. In a scenario where a Pokemon beats its checks, Pokemon has minimal counterplay. Thanks, I had no clue. This makes the claim that Wingle is able to consistently get past its checks in Little Cup, as it states that this is unreasonably likely to happen. If we look at Snake, this is pretty clearly not the case from its win rate, as the second lowest among the top 11 used Pokemon. And so if you look at the list, there are 11 Pokemon, and it has a 40% win rate. I believe that's what that says. Yeah, so it has a 40% win rate, and it's used in 27.03% of the games. So, not sure if that's really adequate justification on the part of the OP. Okay. Corporal Levi states, Chinchou can act as a hard check to Wingle, but is otherwise difficult to justify in the current metagame. So Merritt replies, if a Pokemon that perfectly counters a debatably broken Pokemon is rarely used because it's not justifiable, that's not exactly a strong argument for the broken Pokemon actually being broken. Beyond that, there are other rather solid Wingle checks that do see significant use, such as Magnemite or Tortuga. Corporal Levi states, because of the large number of games that are decided through whether Wingle is able to burn its checks and land its hurricanes, we have decided to suspect Wingle. So Merritt replies, this is reductionist and a weak argument. Every Pokemon has some level of reliance on luck in order to perform well. Why not suspect Mienfoo for whether or not it can hit high jump kick? Rufflet for whether or not it can hit its Brave Birds and superpowers. I believe that the argument presented in the OP is incredibly weak and fails to justify this suspect. I hope to see the people who push for this suspect bring up far stronger arguments within the thread. Corporal Levi gives a somewhat flimsy justification for the original post before it's later edited by quote, but I'm going to read it out anyway, because I have nothing better to do with my life. Okay. My voice really hurts at the moment, but I'm going to continue. Other than the straight up factual errors, this is Corporal Levi, by the way. Other than the straight up factual errors, there's quite a lot of pretty serious misinterpretations of the OP in the above post. I'm just addressing those here. We'll post my thoughts later. Merritt, as earlier said, this is an interesting lead-in, since all games can be decided by luck in some level, whether that be an unlucky critical hit or an Air/Dark Pulse flinch from NP Vullaby. Corporal Levi justifies this by saying, Wingle being luck-based is fine, the potential issue is that it's more luck-based than other Pokemon. A game is much less likely to be decided by Vullaby's Air Slash than by Wingle's Scald. Now later on in the post, as I said, Merritt states that Wingle is held back by the low accuracy of Hurricane. However, this could not be uncompetitive since it's a choice made entirely by the user of Wingle, which I thought was a pretty fair point. But let's move on to Corporal Levi's justification, which states this wasn't an argument used against Wingle at all. It was just a statement explaining why Wingle isn't as good as other S ranks. Relying on a 70% accurate move does not make a mon noteworthy. It's in conjunction with Scald Burns and Wingle being a relevant mon. So Merritt stated this is not only false that Tortuga is no longer able to check Wingle if it's burned, but states that Tortuga still beats Wingle even if it is burned. And Corporal Levi replies, Standard Tortuga loses to Wingle if it's burned, as Wingle can stall out Stone Edge's PP. Interesting. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. You'll have to do your own research. After that, Merritt's point of Magnemite doesn't particularly care if it's burnt or not. Corporal Levi replies, Scarf Mag doesn't care if it's burnt, but it also doesn't check Wingle to any serious degree because Protect renders it as a liability. Sturdy Juice Magnemite absolutely cares if it's burnt. Merritt stated, Snivy can break through its checks with a well-timed Paralysis from Glare, Poniard can break through its checks with a well-timed Ironhead Flinch, etc. And that was in stating that these Pokemon you all use luck to get past their other flaws if need be. So Corporal Levi replies, Snivy, Poniard, and Bullybee can break through some of their checks with luck. They A. rely on said luck far less often than Wingle does. B. require more luck to actually pull through most scenarios. Snivy and Poniard will often need multiple pairs of flinches to win where Wingle only needs an initial burn. And C. do not get around their counterplay to the same degree with said luck. Last few will still beat Poniard every time. Snivy is still revenge killed by far more mons and put into far more scenarios where it's punished when Glare doesn't work out than Wingle and Scald. Vullaby isn't really comparable because it needs a turn to set up, and that alone leaves it quite a lot of counterplay. Now, Corporal Levi doesn't really like the sarcastic Merritt remark, where Merritt makes fun of how Corporal Levi addresses his point in general. I assume these are general counsel remarks, but the way they're phrased make it seem like Corporal Levi didn't have any external output when he wrote all this. So, yeah. Merritt says, you address this later. Not Merritt. Corporal Levi says, you address this later, but there's really no need for this remark. Reasonably likely. A 30% chance to burn is the key phrase. In terms of its snake performance, Corporal Levi replies with, the suspect isn't looking at Wingle has a high win rate, must use Mon. Can you elaborate on how this goes against the claim that Wingle is reasonably likely to break through his checks? Merritt earlier said that if a Pokemon that perfectly counters a debatably broken Pokemon is rarely used because it's not justifiable, that is not exactly a strong argument for the broken Pokemon actually being broken. Beyond that, there are other rather solid Wingle checks that do see significant use, such as Magnemite and Tortuga. And Corporal Levi replies, it means that if you want a solid Wingle check, you're weakening your team to almost anything else. Not worth it. Magnemite and Tortuga are not solid Wingle checks. And in regards to the remaining arguments of luck being the solid qualifier for the suspect test, Corporal Levi responds, Wingle is being suspected because of the large number of games that are decided through whether Wingle is able to burn its checks and land its hurricanes. This implies that it's used a lot. Its luck-based elements are used a lot. And its luck-based elements are often decisive. Scarf Rufflet isn't viable enough to see any real use in competitive play, a far cry from Wingle, and Bulk Up Rufflet tends to be fairly consistent in its performance. Mianfu isn't being suspected for HJK because it's not the bulk of Fu's strengths. it'll be clicking knock up and U-turn just as often, and compared to Wingle, it has quite a lot of counterplay, even if its checks have been removed. Not related to my point, but for what it's worth, it's on the plate for a suspect test at a later date for being a really good mom. So that's the end of Corporal Levi's response post, which, if I may say so myself, I thought it was a good deflection. I'm not sure if it was completely correct, but I don't play Little Cup, so I can't give you a good opinion on this. Everything that comes out of my mouth that I'm not reading is pretty much entirely subjective, so, and not exactly backed up by any rational logic. Anyway, quote response. Hi everyone. I'd like to apologize if the original OP for this thread gave you the wrong idea about the Wingle suspect. I've updated the post to accurately reflect the council's stance on Wingle and show our true intentions with this suspect. We are not trying to suspect a Pokemon because of its RNG dependency, but because it is an extremely potent offensive presence which has the ability to cripple its checks with Skull Burn, Speed, and Z-moves. I haven't decided whether I think Wingle should be banned or not, so I'll leave some simple notes to cover my current thoughts and then expand on them later once I've made up my mind. Quote's ramblings include, it's hard to switch into a water flying type, and it's also impossible to dual resist. Chinchou and Helioptile are the two Pokemon in LC that can do it, but Chinchou has limited use beyond checking Wingle and Magnemite, and Helioptile sucks. Point 2. If Wingle is flying in Z, you have to bait it in most situations to properly play around it, because in nearly every situation where you could theoretically tank a Fly Z powered Hurricane, your opponent can click Scald instead and screw you over. You have to put the Wingle user in a position where they 100% feel like they need to use it, but at the same time not be in the position because you've let all your Hurricane switch-ins perish. 3. Let's see, I forgot what I was using. Protect Wingle, which should be on most Wingle by the way, means it's harder to catch with Scarfers because they're likely to have resist immunities in the back which create annoying switch situations. Although it does present the opportunity for both players to take advantage of that. D will include more in the future maybe. This is followed by another string of points by other people. Altario on Sweep says, glad this was edited. I felt something was off on the explanation. Anyways, here are my thoughts about it. Wingle is a very threatening presence that can blow past anything at once and very hard to manage even with enough coverage. No viable Pokemon has dual resist to Flying plus Water Stab combination, and decent checks to it such as Chinchou are underwhelming due to the ubiquity of Diglett and the common Mienfoo fungus core that forms the standard balance which is easily exploited by Wingle, and would be checks such as Poniard and Tortuga can be crippled for the rest of the game if Skull strikes a burn, meaning that Wingle can still be annoying to face as it can drain Stone Edge's PP for example. Another trait that makes it very influential is that it is mostly the responsible of the resurgence of Ferroseed plus Spirit Seed, which is one of the best defensive cores in the metagame, which handles Wingle very well as other metagame threats not relevant to the topic. I think this trait shouldn't go underseen as it's a drastic change in the metagame provoked by this Pokemon. In what respects to sets, the aforementioned would be checks cannot guess currently when they switch in and shrug up SSSS as it can lead to potentially get burned by Scald, thus leaving them renderless. Protect is the central stone of its success, as not even Scarf users can pick it up properly, knowing Wingle's teammates can back it up once it has scouted the enemy. A prime example is Magnemite, which risks getting in a pinch once it has used Protect, getting trapped by Diglett or Trapinch stuck into Volt Switch or Thunderbolt, forcing it to do some prediction games to either knock Wingle out or damage its teammate. Taking for example the Magnemite vs Wingle plus Ground-type Trapper. The result varies whether Wingle stayed or not, and Protect is key in this 50-50 situation. It can be applied to other situations, making it one of the reasons why it's great. I want to remark something Levi said about Magnemite versus Wingull matchup. It pretty much depends on the set. Although Magnemite is not serious Wingull check, not even serious flying type check, lol. Choice Scarf does not care about the burn, but Berry Juice relies on not getting status to succeed in the matchup. If it gets burnt, say goodbye to it. All in all, while I think Wingull is a decent trend for the metagame, these traits show how difficult and outrageous it can be fighting against it and make it broken, so I'm leaning towards a ban. That's followed by the Quasar, who I did not know actually commented on any of these threads. That's interesting. Okay, honestly, I agree with Meredith at first sight about that. I think Wingull would be used more than it actually is if it was so broken. And if it is burned, it is not something that always happens. It's not an objective fact, so reasonably likely, since we know how much speed tie could be there on an LC game. Otherwise, I'm ready to suspect all Pokemons with Air Slash and Dark Pulse too. Hey Sup responds, not exactly to that post, but to the thread in general. There are a ton of hard counters to Wingull. Chinchou, Lax, Ferroseed, Bulky Juice Mag, Frillich, Tortuga, Like. Don't know what Like is. Just gonna leave that. General Bulky, Spritzy, Vullaby, and bunch of random lower tier mons. People use checks like Scarf Mag, Poniard, and Physical Tortuga for the sole reason that you don't need to have a hard Wingull check because you can basically revenge it with any Scarf or anything bulky. It relies on a 70% accuracy move to beat what it's supposed to force out. To me, this looks like a weird board suspect something topic. Very disappointing. Quote replies to this post. This isn't a board suspect. The council made it very clear that this was an issue worth addressing. I am more than happy with never suspecting anything again if it is warranted. Someone called Decay, I guess? Decay or Decay? This is the last post in the thread, but it is quite extensive and I think it is quite informed as well, so I'm going to continue reading it. I'm in favor of banning Wingull. There are a few reasons why I believe Wingull is unhealthy for the metagame and thus ban-worthy. I want to highlight this because I've noticed a lot of people are comparing Wingull to other broken stuff that were previously banned and seeing that in terms of pure power and stats, it is not as potent as stuff like Murkrow or more recently Aipom. However, Wingull is more so ban-worthy due to its advantageous traits and the significant luck that it entails. I will explore these in a context of Smoke on Tyrion policy and how Wingull interacts with the LC metagame. There are several traits that make it such a potent mon. Unresisted stab other than Chinchou, high quality resist, fighting aka the most relevant type in LC, immunity to ground. A multitude of sets that allow it to handle different situations running knock or sub to take advantage of the more reliable Wingull checks and the fact that it hits 19 speed. However, all these traits are exacerbated by what pushes Wingull into unhealthy territory, Scold and Hurricane and its lack of reliable checks due to this. Let's examine the most common, reliable checks used in the meta to handle Wingull. Poniard, Magnemite, Spritzy, Ferroseed, Tortuga. There are a couple secondary checks that are lesser used, Frillish, and outright unviable, Chinchou, and those will be discussed after. We will first observe how the standard Protect Boost Z-Fly Wingull handles these checks. Of the four main checks used, only Spritzy has form of recovery. The semi-viable Wish. This automatically means the checks are on a timer because they have no way of regaining health and can very easily be chipped down. Note that other than Poniard, none of these mons have a way to trap Wingull. Dig also cannot deal with this ability. Thus, Wingull has the capacity to easily switch out and threaten again in later portions of the game. The ubiquity of Protect helps this, as it can scout for moves namely Scarf, Porns, Pursuit, and Mag's Volt Switch, and force the opponent into 50-50s that are weighted against them. This essentially means that there is almost no reliable way of disposing of Wingull, unlike the two major offensive forces in Little Cup, aka Abra and Ghastly. This factor, coupled with the unreliability of the checks simply based on recovery, already make Wingull extremely threatening. What pushes it over the edge here is Scold. The burn turns of Scold allows Wingull to bypass all of these highly used checks. Polynard and Thortuga can no longer 2-hit KO Wingull, and Roost handles them easily. Scarf Magnemite hates getting burned. Stealth Rock Chip every time it tries to come in and threaten Wingull, especially when Protect can increase the chip damage. Berry Juice Magnemite, on the other hand, loses its ability to endure and recycle, and is no longer a reliable check. Spritzy and Ferroseed are in a slightly different situation, but since both lack regen, the chip damage adds up quickly. Look at these calcs, which illustrate a very common sequence of events. So, Scold against common Spritzy has a 0% chance to 3-hit KO, but the Z move is a guaranteed 2-hit KO, even though the Z move plus Scold would not equal a guaranteed 1-hit KO, wouldn't even reach that point. It's important to note that I'm not sure what I was going to note, but if it gets a Skull Burn here, it pretty much overwhelms Spritzy, and additionally Stealth Rock damage. Well, it can't take both of those, it can't take one of those let alone, but I think Decay mentions is better than me. Spritzy switches into Scold while taking SR damage and gets burnt, a total of 10 HP, then takes 15 to 16 damage from Z Hurricane. This places it at either 102 HP. Now, accounting for any potential tip damage, such as taking SR or just getting U turned on, this makes Spritzy an entirely unreliable check that relies on winning an awaited Protect vs. Z battle. This is, of course, not even accounting for Spritzy getting knocked, which is a common situation that is a biting check primarily. The calcs above do not even account for Spritzy switching into Hurricane, which places Spritzy in Z range without any prior chip other than SR. Let's examine Ferroseed now, which has no reliable recovery. My voice is gonna die. 2-3-6 special attack Wingull Hurricane versus Ferroseed. As you can see, as Wingull needs his 2 HP chip on Ferroseed, and Ferroseed loses. It is not a reliable check because Bullet Seed is also not even a guaranteed OHKO, and Wingull still has speeds after T-Wave in case the Wingull user just attacks Berry Juice Ferro. On the other hand, takes 75% minimum from Z-Fly, which makes it clearly not a check. Oh god. Relish is not the most reliable answer to Wingull due to consistent recovery, the ability to tank Z Hurricane, and resistance to Scold. However, Relish is not exactly a mainstream mod because it limits team builds significantly and can make the team much weaker to other threats. Furthermore, there exist alternative sets such as knockoff Wingull or sub Wingull that can exploit this, although it's not a surefire check either. Hurricane. Z Hurricane does a fair amount of damage to Prillish, and if it gets the confusion off or if it's after rocks, it can get the O2H KO if you count Supersonic and Hurricane as the 2 moves you'll be using. Accounting for SR, 2 plus 9 plus 15 means the most common roll results in Prillish dying. Notice the common trend here. Z Flyinium is in my eyes one of the biggest issues with Wingull. Oh, my throat is killing me, as it allows it to bypass the more defensive checks that otherwise would be able to handle it. It forces the opponent into a series of weighted 50-50s in the favor of the Wingull user. Chin Chow is unviable. And thus does not warrant much discussion. However, only Eevee alike can check any form of Wingull. Scarf cannot switch. Cannot switch. Not switching more than once. How is Wingull able to push so many weighted 50-50s on the opponent and fire up Skull to fish for burns? As aforementioned its superb typing and speed and unresisted coverage allow this to occur. If you examine the upper echelon of viable mons, you can note that Wingle forces out all the S-rank mons, Mianfu, Fungus, Wallaby, depending on set, Diglett if not alone. Of all the A-plus rank mons, it forces out Onyx, Timber, and often Abra, which does not want its sash broken on a wrist speed tie. Thus, it has a ton of opportunities to force the opponent into weighted predictions and further fish for skull burns on its supposed checks. Only one viable mod outspeeds Wingle, Diglett, and it does not always force it out. Wingle's ability to offensively check a large portion of the lead LC meta enables it to abuse its threats to a greater degree than otherwise, which maximizes its luck factor. Furthermore, Wingle is only actually required to run 2 moves, even protecting moves are not mandatory. Wingle can still entirely bypass its checks, namely above, through the use of legitimate moves options such as Knock U-turn, Perturbate the Trapper, and stuff. It can even adjust its item to Watarian to handle Pawn, Mag, Turt without having to rely on Skull Burns. It is, in fact, one of the most versatile offensive mons in Little Cup, perhaps only surpassed by Ghastly. This tremendous versatility is yet another fact that supplements its already aforementioned strengths. However, these factors only push Wingle to the boundaries of brokenness. What pushes it over into bandworthy in my eyes is its luck-based game. Then there's a quote of Hikari. And it's quoting the suspect philosophy or the Tyrian philosophy thread. Hikari says what broken is, and Decay uses this as an argument. Let us examine its unhealthy luck-based game. People have tried to equate this to flinches from Pawn or Wallaby or Focus Blast misses. However, Wingle is different because every time it attacks, it relies on chance, even to a detriment of the user. 30% chance to fuck up its checks with the burn, 30% to fuck up its checks with confuse, 30% chance to miss, 50-50 to trigger the Z move. This does not even mention 50-50 that it creates with Protect, which are natural but also a part of this mod. Essentially, gameplay is with Wingle is almost entirely luck oriented. You cannot plan for Wingle because it can ruin all your plans with luck. This type of mon is unhealthy for the game because it does not always reward the better player, but rather rewards the luckier player. This is not a one-off Ironhead flinch. This is systematic abuse of luck percentages to a degree greater than any other mon in Little Cup history. This type of gameplay should not be recorded, and as such, Wingle is tremendously unhealthy and inherently opposed to skill-oriented play, which is ideal for early tier. Some may say that 30% chance for Hurricane to misbalances out the other luck it brings, but this is incorrect due to 2 reasons. A reasonable opponent of Wingle will not rely the mischance when facing it with Mianfu or Fungus or whatever, and the opportunity cost is far too high. The second reason I believe the 30% chance to miss is in itself a problematic part about Wingle, because even that user can lose to Wingle's luck. Nearly done. Wingle is essentially a Russian roulette weighted in favor of the Wingle user. This is in addition to its lack of reliable checks and the other reasons listed above push Wingle into broken, unhealthy, and uncompetitive territory. And this is why I will be voting bold ban. This source quote from the Tyrian policy demonstrates that through Wingle does not entirely fit a broken definition or an unhealthy and competitive one if it builds enough of both to be ban-worthy. Banning Wingle also adheres to the overall Wave of Smoke and Tyrian policy, which is seen below, to create a metagame that is conducted to the more skilled player, winning over the less skilled player a majority of the time. And that is the end of the thread. Hopefully, I'm just going to double check it is. Okay, I can stop. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.